around him. And it's not that he was throwing fits and kicking over C-stands and, throwing boxes around her.
In the glittering world of Hollywood, where smiles are rehearsed and charm is currency, few people ever dare to speak the truth. But sometimes, the truth comes from the most unexpected voice. This is Heartfelt Tales, where we uncover the real emotions, the hidden conflicts, and the stories Hollywood tried to bury. And tonight, we step inside the mind of one of the most respected filmmakers alive, Ron Howard. A man known for his calm, kindness, and humility. But even the nicest man in Hollywood has his breaking point. Because behind the camera, Howard witnessed something darker. The stars who poisoned the magic of movie making. These are the most toxic actors Ron Howard ever worked with. 1. Andy Griffith. It all began in the warm glow of Mayberry. A young Ron Howard, just 6 years old, stood beside the great Andy Griffith, the man who played his father on The Andy Griffith Show. To the world, Andy was America's favorite sheriff. But off camera, the warmth faded fast. First, Howard adored him. Griffith made him feel safe like a real father figure. But as seasons passed, the pressure of fame changed everything. The mood on set shifted. Andy grew controlling, temperamental, and unpredictable. Crew members whispered that the laughter stopped when the cameras did. Ron learned early that charm could be a mask, that the man who smiled for millions could turn cold in silence. When the show ended, Howard never looked back. He respected Griffith's talent, but he never forgot the man who taught him the hardest lesson of his young life, that Hollywood kindness often ends when the director yells, "Cut." 2. Shelley Long. Fast forward to 1982. Ron was no longer the boy from Mayberry. He was a young director with big dreams, stepping behind the camera for his comedy night shift. His cast was full of promise. Michael Keaton, Henry Winkler, and Shelley Long. It should have been a creative paradise. But paradise didn't last long. Shelley Long was undeniably talented, sharp, beautiful, and perfectly in control of her craft. But that control came at a cost. Every scene became a debate. Every note from Ron was met with resistance. If a line didn't sound right to her, she wouldn't just question it. She'd stop production, rewrite it, and demand to rehearse again. She wanted perfection, but perfection for her, not for the film. For Ron, who valued collaboration and calm, it was exhausting. He didn't shout. He didn't fight. That wasn't his nature. Instead, he learned to lead through silence, to keep the crew focused while one person's energy consumed the room. By the time the movie wrapped, Howard realized something that would guide the rest of his career. Talent means nothing if it destroys the joy of creation. He never spoke badly of Shelley publicly, but insiders say he quietly swore to himself. Never again would he let a single actor control his set. Night Shift succeeded, but it came at a personal cost. It taught him that even the brightest stars can cast the darkest shadows when their ego blocks the light. 3. Tom Sizemore. By the mid-1990s, Ron Howard had evolved into one of Hollywood's most trusted storytellers. When he took on the intense thriller Ransom starring Mel Gibson, expectations were sky-high. Then came Tom Sizemore, a powerhouse actor known for his gritty realism and unpredictable behavior. First, Ron was excited. Sizemore's energy was raw and electric, perfect for the film's tension. But it didn't take long before the problems began. Sizemore arrived late, unfocused, sometimes clearly struggling with personal demons. His addiction battles were no secret, and they followed him to the set. Scenes that should have taken an hour stretched into half a day. Ron would quietly adjust shooting schedules, move scenes around, or rewrite dialogue just to keep the film on track. He never yelled. Instead, he carried the burden, knowing one man's chaos could sink an entire production. When Ransom wrapped, Howard's exhaustion was evident. He'd protected his crew, his film, and his sanity, but it came at the cost of trusting actors so deeply again. Years later, when Tom Sizemore passed away in 2023, Ron Howard said nothing publicly. No tribute, no comment, only silence. Because sometimes silence is louder than words. It was his quiet reminder that even brilliance can be buried under self-destruction, and not every wound deserves reopening. 4. Russell Crowe. Then came A Beautiful Mind, Ron Howard's masterpiece, and the role that would define Russell Crowe. From the very first rehearsal, Ron saw it, that burning intensity that made Crowe one of the best of his generation. But genius has a cost. Crowe didn't just play mathematician John Nash, he became him. He lived in the character's paranoia, mood swings, and darkness. Every suggestion from Ron was met with questioning. Every direction turned into a philosophical debate. The tension was real. Crew members described the set as electric but dangerous. No one dared interrupt when Crowe was deep in character. Even Howard tread carefully, choosing his words with surgical precision. Yet through the chaos, brilliance emerged. The film went on to win 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Ron Howard. But when asked years later if he'd work with Russell again, Howard's polite smile said everything. "Some collaborations," he said softly, "are meant to happen only once." He respected Crowe's artistry, but also knew how fragile it made the process. Sometimes, even great art isn't worth reliving the storm it took to create. 5. Mel Gibson. In Ransom, Ron Howard worked with Mel Gibson at the peak of his power. Gibson had just conquered Hollywood with Braveheart, and he brought that same commanding energy onto the set. But there was a problem. He wasn't just acting, he was directing too. Every camera angle, every scene, every script change, Gibson had an opinion. And while many admired his genius, for Howard, it was suffocating. Imagine trying to conduct a symphony while one violinist insists he knows the score better. That was Mel Gibson. Brilliant, but overbearing. Howard endured it for the film's sake, and Ransom became a hit. But he walked away with a quiet resolve. "I will never share control of my vision again." 6. Henry Winkler. Before the Oscars, before the red carpets and fame, there was Happy Days. It was supposed to be Ron Howard's show, the story of a clean-cut American teen named Richie Cunningham. Then entered Henry Winkler as the Fonz. With one eye, Winkler stole America's heart and the spotlight. Suddenly, Happy Days wasn't about Richie anymore. It was about Fonzie, the rebel, the icon, the cool guy. Howard didn't show anger. He stayed professional, even supportive. But deep inside, it hurt. He once admitted, "I didn't resent Henry personally, but I resented how the story stopped being mine." The experience shaped him forever. He realized how fame can quietly twist friendships, how Hollywood doesn't always reward the hardest worker, but the loudest presence. Still, Ron chose grace. He and Winkler later rebuilt their friendship, both men acknowledging how the industry had played them against each other. And that act of forgiveness became one of Howard's defining traits, the ability to stay kind even when the world isn't. The lesson behind the pain. For Ron Howard, each toxic encounter left a scar, but also a lesson. He learned that kindness is not weakness, that chaos is not creativity, and that the loudest voice on set isn't always the right one. He never exposed these actors in interviews or tabloids. He didn't need to. His silence spoke for him, and the actors he never worked with again became their own cautionary tale. Through it all, Howard stayed true to his values: professionalism, respect, and peace. That's why, despite the storms, he remains one of Hollywood's most beloved and trusted directors, because he knows something few ever learn. The real stars aren't the ones who shine alone. They're the ones who help everyone else glow. And that's the story of the man who mastered patience in the most chaotic place on earth. A man who turned pain into wisdom and silence into strength. If the story moved you, hit the like button, share it with someone who loves cinema, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales, where every light in Hollywood casts a shadow, and every story is more than fame. It's heartfelt.